Bye-bye, little buddy. How much nitrous oxide can a bone stock short block take? That's what we're gonna find out on this episode of Engine Masters, presented by AMSOIL and supported by Mr. Gasket and Earl's Plumbing. Here's the thing, nitrous does not blow up engines, people blow up engines, and we're gonna show you how to not be that guy. We're gonna take steps along the way here as we make more and more nitrous oxide power to show you how you can tune to actually prevent an explosion. But let's be honest, there's no entertaining in not exploding, and there's no chance that that sucker lives. This is a stock Chevy small block. It's a 305, so it's no loss. No crying, dry your tears, because that sucker is gonna go. With its cast crank, stock rod, stock bolts, cast pistons, it's junk. But we have hopped it up a little bit. It's got a Comp XE268 hydraulic flat tappet cam. That is an Engine Quest Vortec head. It has aluminum roller rockers, also from Comp. Big Hankin single plane intake manifold. Big Hankin 850 double pumper. And of course, the precious, the two-stage NOS cheater capable of 500 horsepower. But is that motor capable of a 500 shot? No. But we're gonna find out how much it will take. First, we're gonna run into the dyno and baseline this thing and find out how much power this pooch makes naturally aspirated. AMSOIL knew that we were gonna splatter the guts of this thing all over the dyno cell walls, and they said, you know what, when that happens, it's not gonna be the oil's fault because, bam, Dominator racing oil. They've recommended this every time that we've gone with a supercharged or nitrous application because it has a really tough film strength so that the oil doesn't squirt out from between the bearing and the rod under that heavy pressure. But what's interesting is that they went this time with the SAE 60 weight oil for the 305's final meal. This is the equivalent of going to the chair for an engine. I feel really guilty now.
Yeah.
I feel like we're about to shoot a puppy. That thing runs pretty good. What did this thing make? 358 horsepower and 323 pound-feet of torque. And look at the torque curve.
No, it's good. It really is good. I mean, if this thing were in a guy's Camaro with a 150 shot on it, which we know we can do, this would be good.
Ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay, nitrous time with NOS nitrous. You can't say NOS. You can't say NOS. It's clown shoes. Just don't do it. Here's how nitrous oxide works. Stored here in this bottle, it's a liquid. You inject it into the engine, it's a vapor, and you got all these little molecules that have 1 atom of oxygen and 2 of nitrogen. And because you've got oxygen in there and you're injecting it into the engine, you're bringing more air into the engine, which means that you can burn more fuel. When you burn more fuel and more air, all smashed into the combustion chamber, you make a bigger explosion and more power. Here's how you do that. You inject the nitrous and supplemental gasoline into your engine with some kind of a plate system. This happens to be a plate that goes underneath a Holley carburetor. It is an NOS Cheater 2-stage setup capable of 500 horsepower of additional nitrous into your engine. Now, as I said, nitrous doesn't blow up motors, people do. So people can take steps to make sure that doesn't happen. And here's what we're gonna do. You must control detonation when you're on nitrous oxide. The first thing that we're gonna do with that is run Rocket brand 118 octane gas. That will just control that detonation, help the thing survive a little bit longer. Next thing you have to do with nitrous, because that explosion happens so much faster than it does naturally aspirated, you have to retard the ignition timing. Otherwise, the cylinder pressure is fighting the piston coming up, and that is just disastrous. What we're gonna do to prevent that is use an MSD power grid ignition system, which is pretty advanced. MSD also makes a bunch of other lower end boxes that are designed to retard ignition timing right when you hit your nitrous oxide button, so you always want to do that. Spark plugs. When you're running nitrous, you need to run a colder spark plug range. Now remember, that doesn't mean anything about the power of the spark itself. Instead, it is the temperature of the center electrode there because of the length of the path to the cooling passage. So that is a very cold spark plug right there. Also in your tune-up, you really need to pay attention to your air-fuel ratio. You can hurt your engine whether it's too lean, meaning not enough gas, or if it's too rich. A lot of people say fat and happy. That is not necessarily true. You go too rich, you can hurt your engine on nitrous. I highly recommend you get an oxygen sensor like this and a reader to power it, and either a data logger or a gauge or something so that you know that you're in the range of, say, 12.5 to 1 at wide open throttle on your nitrous. Remember, the air-fuel ratio that makes the most power naturally aspirated on your engine is the same air-fuel ratio that will make the most power on the nitrous. Now, that's all a bunch of tuning steps that you can largely take care of with this chingadera right here. This is a nitrous controller. It happens to be an NOS launcher. This is a really advanced controller that can do a lot of things. It can shut off your nitrous if you're too rich or too lean. It can read your nitrous bottle pressure. It can activate your nitrous in a whole bunch of different ways, throttle switch, whatever you want to do. But most importantly, it can control the behavior of how you're applying the nitrous to the engine, because you'll hurt an engine if you just hit it with the nitrous really hard. What you'd rather do, instead of hitting it like this, is give it a nice push. Put the nitrous into the engine in a delay over time, and that's what this can do. We can ramp the nitrous from, say, 50% to 100% power delivery over a period of time that we select. You'll see that as we move on today. Now, the last thing that we didn't control at all in this test is the fact that you want your engine to have good internal parts: forge, pistons, rods, crank. Our 305 has none of that. Here's what the problem with that is. Not only can the pistons be fragile and just fail under the power, but a big deal is piston ring end gap. Of course, the piston ring goes in here, seals the piston to the cylinder. Now, the end gap right there, of course, gets much smaller when you put this thing inside the engine. The problem is, if you are gapped for just a regular street engine, when the ring heats up under nitrous, that gap can close up. When it does, it breaks the piston. That's probably what we're gonna see here today, and it could lead to catastrophic failure. The smart thing to do is to take any engine apart that you're gonna run with a power adder and just file those rings further open. Did we do that? No, but I bet you this thing will live through the 150 shot of nitrous that we're gonna start with right now. You ready to spray it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Got all the wiring tidied up and everything.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, we have this thing set up right now just on one stage. It's 150 horsepower. We already have it jetted. We've already verified when it's running naturally aspirated that the MSD is pulling the timing out like we want to. It's got 35 degrees total naturally aspirated, and as soon as we hit the nitrous, it drops to 29 for the 150 horsepower level. This is the handheld controller for the NOS launcher, and you can go through the menu here and do all the settings. I am not going to ramp the nitrous in on the 150 horsepower setup. We're just gonna hit the button, boom, 150 horsepower. Later on, you'll see us tuning more with this. So the last thing we have to do is hook up the hose to the nitrous bottle, which we are monitoring pressure very carefully here. You want like 950 pounds of bottle pressure, and we need that to be stable through all our tests, just because that's a way to maintain a consistency and to make sure that you're delivering enough nitrous to the engine. If the pressure's down, it'll go lean. What we've got here is a hot water bath for the nitrous bottle that we'll throw it in right here. And the perfect temperature for it is 92 degrees. Look at that. As if by magic, it is at 93, 92. So that bottle is set. We're gonna hook up a line directly to the nitrous solenoids, and bam! We got it fired up, bottle's open, 150 horsepower, ready to go. Are you gonna purge it?
Yeah, just once real quick.
Yeah, it's just gonna blip it. Our 550 horsepower 305 is making 537 horsepower.
557.
No, 557 horsepower.
Oh, whoa.
200.
200. That happens a lot, actually. We noticed that the factory jetting ends up delivering more. How are we looking on air-fuel ratio?
Well, I have to tell you, part of that is because when the system is optimized and you've looked at everything as far as air-fuel ratio and timing, and it's all doing what it's supposed to do, it's not unusual that they make a little more power than they're actually rated.
So what's our call right now?
I'm already impressed. I say we just put it to bed and,
I know it's pretty happy.
you know, put a blanket over it and say we won.
That's good.
Okay, so this is a good setup, right?
It is.
Yeah. Let's step it up.
What would be better? More power.
Yeah. You're using your croissant wrench.
Just bleeding the pressure out of the line so it doesn't seep into the engine. Always a good precaution. What we're doing here is changing the jets in the nitrous system.
Here's your jet.
And these are very much like jets in a carburetor. They're just a metered orifice. This thing has a hole in it that is a fixed size. This one, I believe we just ran, was a 63 on the nitrous, 59 on the fuel.
You never want to put more nitrous in it without getting the right amount of extra fuel in, or you might just burn the whole thing down.
Now that we're stepping up the power levels, I don't want to smack the motor as hard. So instead of going all the nitrous all in, I am going to ramp it up so that when Steve hits the button, it gives us 50% of the nitrous hit and then goes up to 100% over 1 second. Now we've got it jetted to 250. I think we're finally going to see that 305 crest 600, right?
That's the idea.
Unless you pulled out too much timing.
Wow. That would be awesome.
You're safe.
Just trying to be conservative.
Yeah. Oh! 2 horsepower per cubic inch.
Whoa, that is awesome.
That is awesome. We just made 620 horsepower with a 305 Chevy. Exactly 2 horsepower per cube.
Wow.
That's hilarious. I've gone through like the emotional roller coaster.
Really?
Because at first I was like, oh, this is a junk 305. We're just gonna scatter it against the floor of Steve's dyno cell. And then I was like, oh, I love that warm and cuddly 305 that's making good power. And now I'm like, I want it to make 700 and live. I don't want to blow it up anymore.
Well, you figure if anything pays you back that high of a dividend, then it deserves to go back.
Yeah, you can't put it down. It's no longer like Old Yeller.
No.
Yeah, no. So next step, 2 systems, 150 each, and I'm gonna go into the controller and we're gonna ramp both of them from 50% to 100%. Go.
Right.
That's the thing. I'll get the bottle ready.
Gasket. How about you?
No, it slipped out the, that was blow-by.
I let off the button.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Something went wrong. A lot of smoke out the valve covers. Okay, well, I think we owe it to the 305 to tear the heads off and see what went wrong. I want to see how hurt it is.
It's not catastrophic, though. I mean, it's still in one piece, for the most part.
Yeah, rods aren't hanging out of the bottom of it, so.
Yeah.
That's positive.
Yeah.
Okay, and this one's hurt bad.
What do you see?
Piston on it. This is out of the number 2 cylinder, and look how it's got silver all over it, and in fact, it's filled up the crevice there between the porcelain and the metal here. That is aluminum off the piston, and there's some oil in there too. This is the number 4 cylinder, and you can see that it's got some of that also, and it was a little wet when we first pulled it out. So our guess is that it just killed a head gasket between the number 2 and 4 cylinders, but what we really want to do is pull it apart and find out how dead that piston is.
When you melt your piston and completely fill up your spark plug, that's usually not good.
Right.
What are those little chunky metallic bits?
That's piston.
Yeah.
Piston sand.
Yeah, we gather here not to mourn the death of the 305, but to celebrate the nitrous horsepower of the 305.
That's right. This is not a funeral, this is a celebration of life.
That's right.
Oh. Yeah, it pinched a ring. What you can see here really clearly is just classic nitrous failure with an engine that is not nitrous ready. Right here, the whole top of this piston is missing, just fractured, and it's beat up here from the pieces flying into the chamber and getting smashed. What happens is that the piston ring, which I can see the end gap is right there, it butts together and then lifts like this because it's a circle, it's got nowhere to go, it's got to expand somewhere. It cracks the piston, and then the piston just destroys itself. We are lucky that the piston didn't shatter, and then the connecting rod swings around, just saws the block in half, and you end up throwing away everything underneath the carburetor. This thing's actually savable. The cylinder wall's not even that bad. Ah, poor baby. We made 2 horsepower per cubic inch out of a 305 Chevy.
And then we blew it up.
You know, this was the completely textbook, predictable result of what we were doing here. But I think the real lesson is if you want to do this, take the engine apart, file that ring end gap wide open, just let it be junk, and then you can spray a lot more than we did because the failure was nothing more than that.
We were changing your tune now. It was a blown head gasket in the dyno cell.
It did blow the head gasket.
Yeah.
After that.
I guess you're right. So we were both right on that. But it did pretty well. I'm pretty proud of the 305.
You know, can you really call us engine masters when this happens? You can't. And that's a wrap until next time on Engine Masters, presented by AMSOIL and supported by Mr. Gasket and Earl's Plumbing. You gotta make sure not to touch the nitrous when it's coming out. It will literally burn you.
Wow. That was dangerous, Freiburger.
I know. You know what this 305 is like right now?
What's that?
It's like a puppy on your farm.
Oh no.
Yeah, where it's a nice, cute little warm puppy and you like to play with it and it's a good doggy, but you know it's not gonna last long.
What are you saying? Now I'm a puppy killer?
It's true. Well, we kind of know what went wrong, but now we've got to tear it apart and actually have a look and see what the level of death is. Because, you know, death on an engine is not really a black and white situation.
Unlike a puppy, which is either alive or
Here
dead.
we go with the puppy.
It's more definitive when you're talking puppies.
Yeah.
305s, there's more gray area.
This time on Engine Masters, we are going to blow your mind, adding big power with nothing but a dipstick. Your oil is killing horsepower, I'll bet you a beer. Seriously. And I'm not even talking about like brands of oil or synthetic versus regular. Nope, it is all about oil control inside your crankcase. And this is going to apply to virtually any engine. What we're going to do to pick up significant power is dumbfounding. Honestly, you're not even going to believe it. And once we're through with that, you're also gonna see a comparison of a stock type oil pan like this versus a performance aftermarket pan. It's gonna be pretty good. Let's talk a little bit about what we're gonna use as a test mule here. If you've watched Engine Masters for a while, then you saw this in the episode that was called 600 horsepower camshaft shootout. We compared a hydraulic roller cam to a solid. Well, it's exactly the same configuration. This is a big block Chevy, it's a 454, it makes 600 plus horsepower, it's a pump gas deal, it's actually really, really cool. But the good thing about it is that it's got a giant rotating assembly down there because it's a big block, It's got a 4-inch stroke. It's churning all sorts of trash through the oil all of the time, and that's gonna be a big deal. And it also runs to 6,500 RPM because of the nice little solid roller camshaft in it. So it's a good candidate to show you how controlling the oil in the crankcase is going to make power. First thing that we're going to do is install this turd, fill it up with AMSOIL, of course, and then we're gonna run it and show you how you can make power with oil for less than free. And then we're gonna move on and spend a couple bucks and bolt on an aftermarket pan. Let's get to it. This should be pretty straightforward. I mean, stock oil pan, stock recommended level. What do you want to do as far as procedure to make sure we're consistent?
And I think as far as the stock pan, we just want to verify that, make sure that it's repeatable temperature-wise, and then take a look at the curve and see if there's anything we think we can do to adjust it and make it as good as it can be.
Simple enough, make power. We've already got this thing all tuned up, ready to go. Off camera, we've run this thing like over and over, making sure that our routine is right and that it repeats exactly so that we can get an accurate test. We think this will be our last run, and then we'll be able to give you the baseline results. So our final answer is 577 pound-feet of torque at 4,100 RPM, and up top it made 614.6 horsepower at 6,400. But let's have a look at what's going on with the oil pressure, because we all suspect this is a little over full, and I'm gonna say yes.
And I checked that this is exactly what the factory recommends for this level with this filter. And actually, I thought it was kind of interesting, but if you use a short filter, it actually takes 6.7 quarts with a short filter and 7 quarts with a long one.
So they're down to that kind of accuracy.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
I thought it was great.
They're also not running 6,500 RPM from the factory. They're probably only running 5,000 RPM or less.
Yeah, with that fan originally on a 1-ton truck.
So you've seen this, right, Dulcich?
Well, the thing is, that suggests a control problem, but this particular motor has a solid roller, which is not going to be affected as much as a hydraulic flat tappet or hydraulic roller.
That's a good point.
There's no piston in there to lose compression and cost you lift and duration with the solid roller.
So let me tell you exactly what's going on with this curve right here. What we're seeing is that at high RPM above 5,000, the oil pressure is dropping off. And that means that there's probably too much oil in the pan, it's getting all whipped up, and Steve's talking about how that can affect a hydraulic roller camshaft. If there's a bunch of air in the oil, it's aerated from being whipped around, then that's why the pressure drops off, and if the pressure drops off, a hydraulic lifter is gonna start to fall apart.
Lose some squish.
So we're gonna go pull a quart out of this thing-ish, and hope we can see that improve. Here we go, run it. That's pretty happy for just draining a quart of oil out. We actually made more power. Let's have a look. So let's overlay the full oil pan versus the 1 quart low. Okay, there you go. Kind of predictable on the RPM, I think. Down below 5,000, it really doesn't matter. But once the crank starts whipping that oil around, what'd we see there, like 5 horsepower at peak? It's the difference between 613.8 to 619.8.
Oh, yeah.
6 horsepower just from draining a quart of oil out of the stock pan.
I have seen as much as 20 when they're a quart and a half or something too full.
In this case, I think for a street strip car, a drag racer, if they have any kind of data logging, can look at oil pressure and see the trends that we're seeing where it drops off at high RPM, they're gonna be able to apply this and figure out what they're doing and still be safe. So let's look at our final number with 1 quart out of the pan. So basically what we saw there is that it didn't affect the torque very much because the RPM is too low for that oil to really make a difference. But up top, the final answer with a quart low is 619.8 horsepower at 6,300 RPMs.
I'd like to take one quick look at the oil pressure.
Oh, interesting. Down and back up.
Now let's take a look at the other one. Watch where it diverges. I'll bet it's right about 5,100 when the power starts to change.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're looking at now is the difference in oil pressure between a full pan here, and by full I mean factory recommended, and up here with 1 quart low. It's actually, I mean, the scale that you're looking at between here and here is
2 pounds.
2 pounds, but up here, look at the difference. That's huge. So it's not just a power consideration, it's really a longevity consideration, because you do this too many times,
It's got air in it.
now we have to go find out if we can do a little bit better than that with the Mylodon pan. Now it's time to get into some speed parts with the racy Mylodon oil pan. But before I describe what's going on here, you gotta understand the concept of windage. And as that relates to an engine, it involves the crankshaft spinning around in the crankcase and all of the pistons and rods going up and down. And as they're doing that, they carry a fog of oil with them because the oil is coming out between the cheek of the connecting rod and the crank. It's dropping down from the lifter valley and off of the camshaft. And as it hits that crank and it's spinning around, it can carry what they say is up to 1 quart of oil in that spinning assembly. It's like a big fog. And that takes power because it's more weight that the crankshaft has to move, and because all of the counterweights are hitting the oil in the air as it goes by. And it's just a power suck. And that's what we're gonna try and address with the aftermarket pan. So this oil pan is just like what you'd find on a stock Chevy truck. Let's say like a 98 3/4 ton with a 7.4 liter or a 454. And it's very basic, but it does have the advantage of this baffle in here. In the muscle car era, they didn't do anything like this and it was really bad. But what the baffle's doing is not so much controlling windage, but it's keeping the oil from sloshing around in here. Deceleration, all the oil goes to the front. You know, when you're cornering, it's just keeping the oil there in the sump so that you don't lose oil pressure. But we're hoping that this thing also causes a bunch of windage and that we're gonna find out that this aftermarket pan is gonna help that. So now we're gonna move on to the aftermarket oil pan and let's talk about what it does to solve windage. First of all, in addition to having sort of a baffle back here around the pickup, it has what's called a windage tray. Now, what that's designed for is if you look, this being the front of the engine and the crankshaft is spinning this way, it has a couple of things which are gonna help that fog of oil get removed from the crank. First, these louvers right here, you can see that they go the direction that that oil is being thrown to try and catch it and return it into the sump rather than let it fog around that crankshaft. Probably more importantly is this kick out on this side of the pan that matches up with a groove in here. And what that's designed for is for that oil to hit it and once again be forced to return into the sump instead of being carried around on the crankshaft. The other thing that you'll see in aftermarket pans is that they often have higher volume, higher capacity. There's 2 reasons for that. One, they think that more oil is going to just be better for lubrication in the engine. You've got more reserve in there. Second of all, pressure and volume are inversely proportional, and there's pressure in the crankcase as the engine is running. So if you have greater volume in the oil pan, it reduces that pressure and helps with like ring sealing and stuff like that. But most of those pans you'll see, they have a full length sump on them, whereas this is just a rear sump. For this test, I wanted it to be really valid for anybody with a passenger car or truck. That's why we're using a pan that just has a sump in the back instead of one of those full race pans, and those can offer even more performance. Before we go install this now, I have one last tip, and that is about oil volume. First of all, if you have a stock pan, you can go to the AMSOIL website and look up exactly how much oil it takes, and we found that that's really accurate. But if you have an aftermarket pan, I would say don't trust what the manufacturer says about the quantity of oil that goes in these things. Instead, what you want to do when you get a new aftermarket pan is get a bunch of empty oil jugs, fill them with water up to the full quart mark, and pour them into your pan just to the point where the oil stays underneath this tray, maybe even a little bit lower than that, because if the oil's up on top of the tray, you're just going to aggravate that windage problem. And so we often find that the capacity of these pans is a little bit less than what they advertise. And so what you want to do again is fill that with water and check it, and then fill your filter with oil, and that will tell you the total volume of your oil system for optimum performance. But you also always want to keep an eye on that oil pressure gauge to make sure that you are not losing oil pressure from windage at the top of your RPM range. Okay, so that's enough theory. Now we're going to get into the fact as we install the Mylodon pan on our big block Chevy.
Oh, there we go.
I don't have any nuts over here, do you? Sweet. Ow. So the oil pan swap is pretty easy. We'll button this thing up and then go find out if it makes power. Okay, next up we're gonna show you what happens when you think that you're extra safe by running even more oil. That Mylodon pan is designed for 6.5 quarts and we're gonna run it with 8.
That's a lot of oil for sure.
That's gotta be above the level of the windage tray. It's too much. So we've got the engine up to temperature off camera. We did a couple pulls. We've now got oil temperature sensor, which is very cool. And we followed our routine of what we were doing before. We're gonna do the same thing now so we can get a really clear A/B test of the old pan versus the Mylodon pan with the 8 quarts in it. All right, we're ready to go. So that killed power. So that was pretty much what we expected. We thought we were gonna see the power drop just because of too much oil, and I think we did. I noticed the oil pressure was lower throughout the curve than it was before, and I think that's because there's just so much air in it.
I think you might be right. I think we might not be seeing the big swing and fluctuation because it's got windage with this much oil.
Before we look at the power, let's look at the oil pressure curve. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, see, it only peaked at 74, and look at that big drop. But why does it come back up?
I think it's because it's pumping enough to the top that now it doesn't have a whole bunch in the pan to make windage. So.
Yeah, so if it's that much too high, then at RPM it's sucking it up and putting it up in the valve covers just enough to get it out of the way. That's probably what's going on. So now let's look at how much power that killed. Oh! So super interesting. Basically, we just ran the aftermarket pan with what we believe is way too much oil in it, and look at the curves. The red line represents the stock pan with the reduced oil level in it, and the black line shows that we killed 22 horsepower with too much oil in the aftermarket pans. I bet the audience has no idea that too much oil kills 20 horsepower.
It's surprised a lot of people over the last 10 years or so when we started doing these tests.
So the question really is, how much oil do we drain out of it?
I think we do it a quart at a time.
Okay. I think we're gonna take 3 quarts out of it. I think this thing wants 5 in the pan and 1 in the filter. We picked up some power, but we're still losing oil pressure. Pull another quart out.
I agree.
Now we have 6 quarts in the pan. I'd still pull a quart out and see what happens.
We have to.
Yeah. All right, now we're down to 5, which is the number I called.
I think you might be right,
That's
actually.
the most important part of the episode.
I know.
Is me being right. Boom, best run yet. Thank you.
You win.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice work, Freiburger.
All right, let's see what happened.
Can I revise my guess to say 4 quarts? I bet it makes 1 more.
Hey, the way it's trending, how about no oil? It seems like that would be best, right? Okay, what's the comparison you're gonna call up? 6 versus
against
5?
The 6 quarts, yeah.
There you go. 6 quarts versus 5 quarts. We're starting to get to the point of diminishing return. But as you can see, that lower oil level made more power. Our new peak, 627.9 horsepower, which is the best run we've ever made.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Pick up another 7 or 8. I mean, that's...
Yep. Let's look at the oil pressure and see what we think about that. Take a look at that. This oil pressure curve right here that's low is with 6 quarts in the pan, and this is with 5 quarts in the pan. This is sort of an anomaly here that is the difference between 75 and 71. So it's 4 PSI, but it's trending the right direction up at RPM. So I think we're there, right?
Yeah, I think we are. I find it interesting that with the exact same oil temperature,
right,
200 degrees, The oil pressure is still higher there by 2 or 3 psi, even
there's
starting
less air
out.
in it.
Yeah, but even at low speed, I mean, I would expect
Right.
that to be better at higher speeds, like it is.
But the
even at
air
low speed,
stays in the oil. You can see those little bubbles hanging out in there for 5 or 10 minutes, right?
that's a good point, because after I was done warming it up and making a couple runs to get the temperatures right, there was still air left over.
Right.
Good call.
Wow, that's pretty good. Let's look at our final power numbers of the optimum oil in the Mylodon pan versus the optimum oil in the stock pan. And there you go. There's the gain that we saw from the aftermarket pan right up here at the top. Again, the benefits are all at the higher RPM range, but the crank scraper, the windage tray, which let's be honest, are really basic in this thing, not really optimized, just bolt-on parts, and it gained us, what? 8 horsepower.
8.5.
Yeah, all the way up through here, but the real indicator there is that the oil is happier and everything.
Engine's probably going to live longer.
It's all wind.
Just with real oil in it instead of oil and air.
Yep. All right, so that was great, but I actually think there's a little more to talk about.
Well, like what?
Oh, I'll tell you.
Okay.
A few more tips and tricks.
I'm all ears.
Remember when you were a teenager and you wanted to adjust your ignition timing, and so you would go out and floor it and keep advancing it till it pinged and then back it off 1 degree?
How else would you do it?
You know what I just learned from this episode?
What?
You'd want to just keep draining oil out of the thing until the engine blows up and then add a quart.
Oh man, I wouldn't do it that way.
I know. I'm actually, the reason I say that is I'm a little worried that a lot of people will take that away from this episode and go, oh man, just keep draining oil out, it keeps making more power. That's not really the deal. What we sought out was the right oil level on the dyno. It's probably going to be a little bit more if you're driving around in a car and you've got to deal with like acceleration and all the oil going to the back of the pan, deceleration with it all going forward, going side to side and cornering. All of that can uncover the pickup and give you oil pressure problems. So you always have to look at that instead of just randomly draining the oil out. But nonetheless, the lesson of most oil pans telling you to run way too much oil, I think is a big one. The other point that I wanted to make is people should be aware that the oiling problems are going to be worse the longer your stroke and the higher your RPM. Those are the things that are really going to make that windage a big deal.
Yeah, because it's going to be more likely to grab oil and wrap it around that crankshaft.
Yep.
There's actually a lot more you can do to control the oil than what we showed here as well.
Oh yeah, we didn't even really try that hard. I mean, we just bolted on an out-of-the-box pan. There's a bunch more that we can do to control oil and make power.
You can add scrapers or additional baffling and even windage trays that fit up tighter to the crankshaft.
Yeah.
All those things will help make more power.
Or a full-length pan. I mean, basically anything you can do to get the oil pan away from the crankshaft is going to be a win up to the point where it's dragging on the ground.
What's the ultimate setup then?
The ultimate setup?
Yeah.
Oh man, is a dry sump.
Oh man, that's the ultimate because it sucks all that oil right out of there.
Dry sumps make power. We should try one day, and maybe we will, right here on Engine Masters, which is presented by AMSOIL.
This pump is hotter than this pistol. Ouch! Son of a gun.
Imagine that, a hot oil pump on a hot engine. No waiting around here.
This time on Engine Masters, it is a bloodbath showdown of a 408 Mopar versus a 408 Ford, and there's going to be one winner and a bunch of crybabies. This time on Engine Masters, presented by AMSOIL and supported by Mr. Gasket and Earl's Plumbing, we've got a head-to-head shootout of a 408 Mopar and a 408 Ford. We've gone to great lengths to build these things as close to identical as we possibly can. The Mopar is a Blueprint Engines crate motor. It is what it is. Then we've taken a Blueprint Engines short block for the Ford 408 and we've used it and matched the specs of the Mopar, and here's what those are. Up top, Holley 850 Ultra XP double pumpers. Both of these things are running MSD ignition. Both of them have Edelbrock Performer RPM intake manifolds. We also went to Edelbrock for the cylinder heads. Now for the Mopar, Edelbrock only makes one casting for the small block head. It's got a 170cc inlet runner. For the Ford, they make a whole bunch of stuff. The one we've chosen has a 190cc inlet runner. The reason for that is, it's the same price to get this head as it is the smaller one, so nobody in their right mind for a 408 cubic inch engine would pick the smaller head. We've got the same camshaft in both of these engines. It's a Comp Cams hydraulic flat tappet. They're both 241, 247 at 50 thousandths tappet lift. The compression ratio is very similar, 9.6 and 9.8 to 1, but they share the same bore and stroke. 4.04 inches on the bore, 4 inches on the stroke. Do the math, that's actually 410 cubic inches, although generically, everybody calls these 408s, and everybody wants to know which one makes more power, the Ford or the Mopar. We're gonna get to that now, starting with the Mopar. The other thing that we need to keep identical between these two engines is the oil. Because believe it or not, in all of our testing, we do see a variance in horsepower depending on the brand and weight of oil that we're using. So of course, we're gonna be using AMSOIL in both these engines. This is a Dominator Racing 1030. And the thing that guys were telling us is that even in a range of, let's say, SAE 30 weight oil, there could be a high end or a low end, and the thinner stuff is gonna make more power, the thicker stuff is gonna make less power. So using the exact same oil in both engines eliminates that variable. Another thing that we see all the time is that oil temperature has a big effect on performance. We usually make one dyno run, watch the coolant temperature, and then on the second run it'll make more power because the oil is up to temperature. And so it's more important than you might think to make sure that the oils are poured all over your valve cover and your header, because what you really need is for this to smoke right when you fire it up. That's the impressive part. Yeah, that'll be great. How come we think the Mopar's the underdog? Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We don't even need to dyno it if Dulcich thinks that it's going to lose.
No, he probably has a little more experience with these things than we do. But, I think it'll be good though.
I think it's a good street combo, but if you're looking for max power, 170cc head on 408 cubes is not enough.
Here's the only hope that I hold is Blueprint has literally never failed us on a horsepower claim. It's always been what their claim is or more. And so this is going to make at least the 445 that they advertised it at.
441 or something.
Okay, and this is a better intake manifold and carburetor than they test with. So that's why I think it stands hope of making 450.
Do we have better headers than they used? I wonder if they use dyno headers and we have chassis headers.
Don't know.
Well, we have to see what it makes and then we'll start making excuses.
See, here's the secret that you don't know. Brule already has the answer. He tuned this thing to perfection this morning, whereas we have no clue.
Right, and he's not telling us.
As far as this motor goes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't told us what's up, but he knows. Now you're gonna prove it to the world. Fire it up. That's really good.
400 pound-feet at 2,500 RPM.
Yeah, that's solid. In our final test, the 408 Mopar makes 489 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM, and over here we're looking at 438 horsepower at 5,500 RPM.
You know, I think we kind of get wrapped up in that peak number. And when are we really using the peak number in a street car?
All the time.
That wide open throttle. How does the curve look?
400 pound-feet, I mean, this is just kind of the thing being that low of engine speed and taking off, but at least it's flat, there's no dip. It holds on to that 400 pound-feet. And then when it gets a little bit of engine speed, boy, it gets happy in a hurry.
It has a big duration cam in it. It probably is just beginning to catch up here at 3,000 on the cam, as they say. That's where the VTEC kicked in. But still, 400 pound-feet at 2,500, that's a tire-burning machine.
Yeah, and you could hear it too when it on the cam. It just kind of exploded on the dyno, I thought.
No, you could, there was definitely a change in engine tone, but no, it's good. I mean, I like it.
So now, really, the Ford argument is going to come down to our guess. I'm still convinced it's going to make more horsepower than this.
I don't think there's any question about that.
Is it going to make the torque curve? Because it's got the bigger head and this has got the smaller head. The theory might kick in that smaller head makes more torque.
I don't know that on the dyno we would see that because we're looking at wide open throttle.
Right.
Yeah.
The smaller head might be a little better at part throttle and the bigger head might be a little softer potentially, but on the dyno at wide open throttle, I don't know that we'll see that. But I think that this thing really is really good as far as torque. I mean, it's doing everything it's supposed to do. Like I was saying, it makes 1.2 pound-feet per cubic inch. With a flat tappet hydraulic camshaft, I think that's everything it's supposed to do.
I think the Ford's going to be just as good down at the very bottom, and then it's just going to cripple this thing at the top.
Only one way to find that out.
Yeah, let's bolt it up and
We better
see.
go swap them.
Yeah.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, handle that.
Yes, please. I'll be on the phone later.
Mopar guys, are you crying right now, or are you standing firm in your belief in Ma Mopar? That engine, if you'll remember, was a Blueprint Engines long block. You can buy that thing as is from Summit for $52.95 with a warranty. This thing is a Blueprint short block, and we've added all the rest of the components to match the Mopar. This is gonna be super interesting. The last time we built two nearly identical engines of different brands, the dyno curves almost exactly laid over each other. This time I'm thinking, not so much. I think that cylinder head's probably gonna outrun the Mopar. And I'm a Mopar guy. I would kind of like that one to win, but let's go find out for real.
You know, I think we're being a little too hard on the Mopar.
I think
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
I think I'm driving that.
Yeah.
I've been in a bad mood about it, but you know what the other thing I have to say about it is we complain about how it won't RPM, but aside from Dulcich, who needs to rev to 7,000 RPM when you can make the power at 55?
Yeah, they seem
right?
to live a little longer at 5,500 or 6 than they do at 7 or 7.
Well, and they drive better
Yes.
on the street, in truth. Unless you're Dulcich.
I don't know if I buy that. Oh, what am I doing? Took the plug out and I forgot the drain pan.
Dulcich took the water plug out with no bucket.
As much as I like the Mopar small block, the Ford's gonna win this one, I think.
We need Ford headers. That's another thing, by the way. We ran 1 3/4 inch header tubes on both of these engines. So that was the same as well.
And they both have stamped steel chrome valve covers.
Ooh, Mr. Gasket. Yeah, that's our sponsor right there, dude.
They're really nice. But they are, they're pretty nice.
What are the odds we got the firing order correct?
100%.
Yeah?
I'm confident.
Because we walked away and let Brule do it?
That's gonna be great when it goes kapoom, pow, piff. Looks like a Batman comic book with all the expressions.
Well, we're gonna stand around and wait for Dulcich for about another 10 minutes, and then we're ready to fire this thing up.
I'm doing artwork here.
Artwork? It's my art project.
Okay, you can do art while we're eating lunch, and then we'll fire this thing.
I didn't know lunch was here. I'm done with my art.
Okay, Ford 408.
Wow, it's pretty good.
Where was your Mopar on that one, Dulcich?
It wasn't mine, that's actually your Mopar.
I think it did exactly what we thought it was gonna do.
I think
Yeah.
it did. Yep. We're gonna look at a comparison now between the Mopar and the Ford, and interesting. What we're looking at here is the black line is the Ford and the red line is the Mopar. The Mopar's got an advantage down here below 3,500. Kind of interesting that they both follow that same shape there also, but it diverges below 4,500, about 4,300, and up here, the Ford is destroying the Mopar. Is your theory here, it's the same here, but this is making more torque on the Mopar because of a smaller cylinder head,
Yeah.
and this is making more horsepower than the Mopar
That's exactly it.
because of the bigger cylinder head?
It's not intake manifold, it's not camshaft.
We looked at the average of all the data points between 2,500 RPM and 6,000. If you add up all of those power numbers and divide by the number of data points, you get the whole area under the curve. And when you do that, the difference between these two engines is 9 horsepower and 9 pound-feet. But you're saying that that's actually pretty big?
Well, I mean, 9 on an average over the whole curve, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, and if you were looking at running it at the drag strip from 45 to 6, big difference.
That's a big difference.
But below that, no difference.
No deal.
The Mopar's pretty good, but the Ford's better.
How would that look in the Cougar?
I think it might be too tall. I'll stick with the 363, but that would be a sweet engine in any street performance car.
That in the Cougar versus the Mopar in the Challenger. That would be fun.
Whoa,
Whoa.
whoa, I'm liking that. You want to do that?
Sure. That'll happen like in, what, a week?
Oh,
Say it out loud, Dulcich.
the Ford's better.
I love it.
All of a sudden, you're over there cuddling up to that Ford.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I see you've taken to the Mopar, so, you know.
You pick the winner. Give me a minute. Soapbox, okay?
Yeah.
No one is going to change their brand allegiance based on watching a dyno video, right?
No.
So Ford guys are Ford guys, Mopar guys are Mopar guys. This might as well be a Republican, that might as well be a Democrat, right?
Right.
So this is really only going to divide people even worse.
Yeah.
So what do you anticipate that the arguments are going to be?
This had a better head, so it wasn't fair.
Right, we loaded that one.
Yeah.
So here's my reasoning on that. Once again, this is the only cylinder head in the aftermarket that you bolt right up to an LA motor that takes the stock valve train, stock exhaust, stock intake manifold.
Yeah, I call that a replacement style head.
Right.
Right.
So the Ford has the same thing, but it's bigger. The thing is, because the Ford is more popular in the aftermarket, there are a ton more cylinder head options for this thing that do bolt right up.
Right.
So the Ford won because of a better cylinder head. My argument is that's because that's what's available in the marketplace and that's not what's available here. Of course you can make this make more power than that. You could, just
Yeah.
by porting these, right?
Sure. Make that a lot bigger, but really we're dealing with what's out there. And that's what anybody's going to run into, just like we did.
But what it turned out to be interesting is the way the curves laid over each other, we absolutely predicted. I mean, we almost didn't even need to run the dyno. We knew what was going to happen, right?
No, we were within 5 horsepower on each motor as far as peak.
But
Ford won, hands down. There's no argument for me.
in the end, I think all we really did is start an even bigger fight, which is kind of what we do on Engine Masters. We're presented by AMSOIL, and we have support from Mr. Gasket and Earl's Plumbing. We appreciate those guys. Make sure to check us out every single month here and on MotorTrendOnDemand.com.
So what qualifies someone as a Mopar guy? Is that like the whole car thing, or engine only, or?
No, you
I've always
gotta,
looked at Mopar guys as more of a cult.
yeah, you gotta be a Mopar or no car guy.
Okay.
That's the thing.
And the Blue Oval guys are just basically cigar smoking rednecks?
No, I don't know.
Would I be a Mopar guy?
Pretty much, yeah.
Really? How come?
There's 30 of them in your backyard.
Well, besides that.
Besides that.
No, but I mean, I've got Chevys and Fords too. It's in the cam section.
Pardon me? You mean there's a cam section in the Cam's catalog?
I was just trying to confuse you, Steve-O.
Oh, trust me, I didn't need help.
No.
Every morning when I see your face, it feels like we're in a perfect place. Hand in hand, through the highs and lows, with you, my love, the feeling grows. We've been through it all, come so far. You're my compass, my shining star. In your arms, I found my home. With you, I'm never alone. We know it's true. This life is better because of you. In every moment, day or night, our love is shining pure and bright. In the sunshine, here we go. With you beside me, love will flow. Every step, every kiss feels like magic. Pure like this, we've got the world, we've got the time. In this love, we always shine. You and me, we're chasing dreams. In this life, we're a perfect team. Through the seasons, through the years, we face the world without fears. Every laugh, every tear only brought us closer, dear. Your love is all I need to see. The way you care, it sets me free. This love is strong, it's built to last. Our future's brighter than the past. We love, we know it's true. true. This life is better because of you. In every moment, day or night, our love is shining pure and bright. In the sunshine, here we go. With you beside me, love will flow. Every step, every kiss feels like magic, pure like this. We've got the world, we've got the time. In this love, we always shine. You and me, we're chasing dreams. In this life, we're a perfect team. In this life, we're a perfect team. In your eyes, I see the way. Love that brightens every day. With you, my heart is always full. A love so simple, so beautiful. In the sunshine, here we go. With you beside me, love will flow. Every step, every kiss feels like magic, pure like this. We've got the world, we've got the time. In this love, we always shine. You and me, we're chasing dreams. In this life, we're a perfect team. You and me. You and me. In this life, we're a perfect team. You and me. You and me. You and me. In the sunshine, here we go. With you beside me, love will flow. Every step, every kiss feels like magic, pure like this. We've got the world, we've got the time. In this love, we always shine. You and me, we're chasing dreams. In this life, we're a perfect team. You and me, you and me, you and me.
This time on Engine Masters, we're gonna find out how Steve Dulcich home ported a set of cylinder heads to make big, stinky power for free. This is Engine Masters presented by AMSOIL and sponsored by Mr. Gasket and Earl's Vapor Guard Plumbing. Now this time, it's gonna be pretty interesting because we're gonna take an engine and we're not gonna change any parts on it. But what we are gonna do is completely hog out and port the intake manifold and the cylinder heads and find out how much more power we make with just a little bit of elbow grease. Now, this engine should be familiar if you're a fan of Engine Masters. It's the same one that we did in that Ford versus Mopar Stroker shootout episode a while back. And you'll remember in that episode, we complained a lot about the fact that the Mopar here lost that competition basically because the cylinder heads don't flow very well for an engine at 410 cubic inches. So we're out to solve that. Now, what this is a long block from Blueprint Engines. You can buy it for about $5,300, and it comes with a front cover and an oil pan and a camshaft. Pretty good deal. The camshaft that's in it is a hydraulic flat tappet. It's 241, 247 at 50 thousandths tappet lift. That means that is a pretty big hydraulic flat tappet camshaft. This thing should RPM, but it doesn't because it doesn't flow much air. These are an out-of-the-box Edelbrock cylinder head. Now, Edelbrock has recently introduced a Victor head that is much more bitchin' than these. But what we're gonna show you here is how Dulcich took a set of these heads and made them better just with a little bit of handwork. Now, what's different since the last time we ran this engine is two things. First, the rocker arm ratio in here. We've changed it to a 1.6-to-1 ratio roller rocker, so it's got a little bit more lift. It used to have 1.5-to-1, which is stock. Also, when we ran this before, it had a dual plane intake manifold, which favors low end torque. We've now got a big ol' Super Victor single plane on it that is probably gonna run pretty bad and kill a lot of low end torque compared to the last time we ran this engine. But the whole point is, it's gonna be a scientific A/B test of the exact same components before and after home porting. So now let's go hang a thing on the dyno, pour some oil in it, we're gonna fire it up, see how bad we killed the torque curve with this intake manifold before we make it heroically better with a bunch of ported parts. My prediction is that when we swap to this intake manifold, we probably killed a whole lot of torque, and it's probably not gonna make any more horsepower, and it's probably not gonna make any more RPM. So this thing's basically still a tame street engine, but when we put the ported stuff on there, I'm hoping this thing will scream. And because of that, we're gonna use the Dominator racing oil. We're gonna throw the 1030 in this thing. This is what AMSOIL has recommended to us for this engine. Even though we've had the premium protection in it before, we're trying to step it up a little bit. Oh, check this out. See this white stuff that just came off of the valve cover grommet? That might freak you out because it looks like the kind of milkshake that happens when you get water in oil. But we often see that on the dyno. We get a little bit of condensation in here when it's cold in the morning and stuff, and it just sort of burns off. We let the AMSOIL do the lube and not the coolant. The long pour is back. I've still got it. Oh, I failed. I failed worse than ever. The reason that we've got this mishmash of components is that we wanted a clean A/B test to compare with the ported intake and heads that Dulcich has. And that's what he used as an Edelbrock Super Victor big single plane. So.
Yeah, that's the match set, so we had to make this same component setup,
Yeah.
right?
So this is gonna be humiliating, but run it.
I bet you it'll still make more top-end power than it did before.
I don't think so. I think the head is a limiting
Sometimes when you
factor.
saturated the head, that's just
all you
there
get.
is.
Yeah.
Can't get there from here.
You don't make one side any better, you make the other side a lot worse.
Yeah. It's like taking the freeway and necking it down to one lane. That's what that cylinder head's doing. Got the coolant up to temp, oil's hot.
Ready?
Let it rip.
Here we go.
What'd you see, Dulcich?
440 horsepower.
Okay, so that's up 5. But wait till you see the torque.
448 pound-feet out of a 408-inch motor.
That's not very good torque.
Let's see what we got. Not even a very pretty curve.
No.
And that's valve float.
It's into some sort of distress. It hasn't completely crashed yet, but it's not happy there.
What we just saw is that it made 438.7 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 448.2 pound-feet of torque at 4,700. Just out of curiosity, I've got to see this curve laid over the one from the earlier episode where we had the dual plane intake manifold.
And the survey says,
oh! So this is horrible and what we predicted. The red line is the prior test with a dual plane intake manifold. This black line is the single plane we've got on it now. You can see that big, tall race manifold killed all of the torque and power in the world. The real question to me is when we get more airflow through it, are we gonna take the RPM points at peak power and move them up?
Gotcha.
And do you think that the torque will stay at the same RPM and that the horsepower will be at a higher RPM?
I think it could shift the whole thing up a bit with the ported head, larger head. And when I said a bigger head or bigger intake, it really is, we're probably gonna see some torque improvement because of just, it's an improved cylinder head, not necessarily just bigger.
Either that or you completely screwed it up and it's gonna be a disaster.
It might be. You want to know why?
Why?
Because with that setup, you're depending on a higher RPM to make the additional power.
And your valve train might not hold it
Well,
together.
it's not the valve train, it's the hydraulic lifter cam. When you do a really high RPM motor, what do you want? You want a solid roller, or you want a really,
At least
really
a
good
solid flat
hydraulic, or you want a solid flat tappet. But
And this is a hydraulic flat
Engine
tappet.
speed's the key to the upgrade in cylinder heads
Yeah.
and intake. So we're gonna have to...
Less talking, more
Wrenching?
ported heads being installed.
yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm hedging. Am I making excuses here?
Now we're gonna get into the cylinder head porting goodness, but first, we were talking so much about the torque curve in there, about how much better this engine was before we put the big single plane intake manifold.
And killed all
Killed all the power. I just wanted to show people, this is the manifold we had on that engine before. It's a dual plane, it has longer runners. These things clearly make way more torque than the race type single plane intake manifold. But what we're really after here is looking at how much we can improve those parts that we just had on the engine. So we're not changing anything, we're just modifying the intake manifold and cylinder heads that we just ran in that dyno test. Now, cylinder head porting, or intake manifold porting, is just going in here, reshaping, restyling, usually enlarging the runners that deliver the air and fuel into the engine, because the more air and fuel you can get in there, the more power you make. So Steve probably spent about a week and a half of his life, and Bryce on this intake manifold. Steve didn't do this one, he did the heads. With what's called a die grinder, and you can get stones for them, or cutters, or sandpaper rolls, and go in there and just really carefully reshape all of this stuff. The intake manifold has just enlargement, or do you think there's other modifications? He's knife-edged some of the port transitions.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than you can tell just by a casual look, but really you quantify how good you're doing by testing on a flow bench like at the back of this shop right here.
Or a dyno.
Yeah, or a dyno, even better. But that tells you if this thing is actually flowing more air than when you started.
So that's it with the intake manifold. Now moving on to the cylinder heads, these are not only ported, but Steve also did a trick to make the port window larger. What'd you do?
Well, the thing is, with any inline valve engine, the push rod's going to present a restriction to the intake port width because it pretty much cuts through in the casting right where the ports are. So you can't go any wider than that unless you move the push rod out of the way. And actually, Chrysler started doing this back in the 70s on their race heads like the W2, and that's what I patterned this after. And I filled out the original pushrod hole, moved it over to the W2 location, allowing a much wider port, and a bigger port, and a higher flowing port.
So you can really see the difference in the port size on those things. And what's neat is he did all of this at home. This is taking the same exact parts that we just dyno tested and hopping them up. I like that you made this epoxy matrix of aluminum shavings and JB Weld to fill the old holes. And then he made a fixture to drill a new pushrod hole. And also put a larger intake valve, it's 208 instead of 202. And he ported the exhaust side as well. So the thing is, you can buy an aftermarket head that has this type of modification already done to it. Edelbrock's got a new Victor series head that's done this way. Indy sells a bunch of them. The ancient Mopar Performance W2, W5 heads are the same way. But this is what Steve did basically just with elbow grease and ingenuity and a lot of time. So it shows you what you can actually accomplish in your own garage if you put the time and skill into it.
Yeah, plus I already had the head, so just a little grinder work and hopefully it'll make more horsepower. Don't know about that yet.
Free is better than good? Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah.
So that's a whole lot of work if it doesn't make more power. So we're gonna go bolt it all on and find out.
My anxiety level is through the freaking roof.
I know, he always gets so worked up. So what's happening now is because he's enlarged the port so much and they don't make an aftermarket gasket, he's gonna take a stock gasket and port it so that it fits these.
That's right.
This is not normal procedure for an intake manifold gasket. He's doing this so that he can affix it to the head, which will make it easier to hack. The other thing Steve didn't show you before is that this intake manifold bolt also had to be moved because when it's over here, it goes into the pushrod hole, right?
Right.
Or it would have gone into it after you moved the pushrod hole, so he had to move the intake manifold bolt over as well. That's the type of stuff when you're really going all out with backyard hot rodding, you sometimes have a domino effect of stuff you need to do.
But that's the way it used to be done back in the day. I mean, people didn't buy performance, they'd made performance by experimenting and cutting and changing and machining and hacking and hot rodding, right?
I'm thinking this episode is not so much about, you know, hey, go hog the stuff, but it's just an example of the mad scientist stuff you can do in hot rodding to make stuff good.
Percent. I know.
Oh man.
The best thing about this test is watching him squirm.
I know. It's not about the power.
No,
it's
not
really
at all.
about that.
Not at this point.
I feel like a hog on its way to slaughter.
So I think we all agree this is going to make more horsepower, right? It can't
As long as
not.
we have some engine speed.
The problem is we discovered out there that the lifters bleed down really easily. Brule was lashing the valves and you could just collapse the lifters like with one finger.
Yeah, it's a little scary, even with the good springs and lighter retainers and stuff.
We about there? You want to run it?
We're good.
How do you feel, Steve?
Great. In the words of Tony Tiger. That's 100 horsepower up, dude.
100 horsepower gain. Let's look at the actual numbers, but it's somewhere around there. So our final number, 530.8 horsepower at 6,400 RPM, and the torque peak, 488 pound-feet at 5,200. And again, if we go down here at 3,800, which is where it peaked with the old cylinder heads, it's still right there within 5 numbers. So the overlay tells you that this is absolutely worthwhile, and Dulcich looks like a superhero.
Will you port heads for me?
I don't really port heads for anybody except Freiburger these days. And my stuff.
What was your mobile number?
Wow. Okay, well, let's go wrap up this show and make you look like a superhero.
I'm already feeling pretty happy.
He is a superhero.
Oh, Brule, thanks.
How do you feel?
Good.
I know.
Because the motor's good now.
That was great. This legit the biggest win in the history of the show.
You think so?
Completely.
And it
because 92 horsepower with nothing but manual labor, and it took this engine that was making like 435 and turned it into, what did it make, 539 or something?
Yeah, something like that. It was pretty good.
And you did it.
Oh,
That's
dude.
what makes it really cool.
It wasn't all me. My buddy Bryce Mulvey, he did the intake manifold.
Yeah.
And he did do the valve job and a little bit of tuning up on my port work, but
still, it just shows what's possible. And I would like to say that anybody who's watching the show could get the same results home porting their heads, but that just isn't true. It takes a lot of skill. This isn't Steve's first set of heads. But the lesson is buy the best cylinder heads you can. It is completely worth it. And there are a bunch of small block Mopar heads on the market that can probably match or beat this, and they're available on the Edelbrock Victor series, which is new.
Right.
And Indy Cylinder Heads makes a few versions of the same thing where the push rod's moved out of the way and it uses different rockers and stuff. Big stroker engine, completely worth it.
yeah, that's what I always say. If you've got the cubes, make sure you've got the airflow to feed them.
This episode made Steve look like a superhero. And that was really the whole point of this episode of Engine Masters.
Yeah. I wanted to test my theory of gravity. You know, Sir Isaac Newton proved the theory of gravity in like 1720s.
What hits the ground faster, an aluminum head or an iron head?
I know which one hurts more.